just start with like, what does burnout feel like?
Yeah.
Because
But I
that's
want to
like
distinguish
kind
between
of,
like burnout, meltdown, and shutdown.
yeah, because it's very, very real stages
Yeah.
of it.
And like there's an experience, like there's a general burnout, meltdown, and shutdown. Like there's a generality of it. And then there's something really specific inside of the neurodivergence,
Yes.
burnout, meltdown, and shutdown. Right? Like,
One thing I want to do is the spoons, because I have a very different theory on the spoons
okay,
that I'd love to share with you.
okay. I
But
think
I
that's going
kind
to
of
be
want my
important.
spoons to do it. I was like, I need some plastic spoons to be like, and I
Yeah.
don't know, it's just my interpretation, like, because I've seen different spoon ones, and I'm like, oh, I like pieces of that, and I like parts of that, but I think like there's a bigger conversation that I'm like, you're not hitting all the stuff that's like when you talk about neurodivergent burnout and spoons. I think there's still like a hybrid conversation that we need to have.
Yeah. Well, I think too, some people use the spoon conversation and some people don't. Like it's a nice
Yeah.
analogy inside to give a visual, a context to it. And that's why it comes into the conversation. Anyways, I was just like a bandwidth. Like a bandwidth is
Yeah.
like my
A
term that
body
I,
budget. I like Mona
yeah, like
Delahook's
we
body
have
budget.
a certain bandwidth, we have a certain budget, we have a certain reach and capacity. There's a certain capacity that we each have. And I think any human, right? Like
Yeah.
we always, regardless of whether you're neurodivergent or not, or what you, whatever, there's a certain capacity that you walk around with in each moment. And your capacity
Yeah.
changes
From
ongoingly.
day
Like
to
what's your
day,
stress
hour to
level?
hour.
Yeah. What's your stress
Yeah.
levels? What's your interactions happening? How are you taking care of yourself? What are you taking on? Where are you stretching your posture capacity?
Yeah.
And like, I like the budget idea is a nice way to look at it too, because sometimes we can go into debt.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can go into
You go into
debt.
tomorrow's budget today,
Exactly.
so you wake up with less. And that's where like that's where I think the spoons analogy is missing. I'm like, neurodiverse people like extend themselves so much out that they don't even start with the same amount of spoons to begin with in the day.
Yeah. Like often we're not even starting at like a full spoon capacity,
Yeah.
like you're at a negative capacity or
Your
less than
body
yesterday
budget.
capacity because you're borrowing. And like I was notorious and I really I'm very proud of myself. I don't do this anymore. Unfortunately, it took a burnout and a shutdown in a really extreme state to teach me some very valuable lessons and how to take care of myself. But I used to drive myself, right? Like I did not give myself the compassion to meet myself where I was and had expectations on myself to be something, do something, perform in some way, show up available. And I also didn't understand my neurodivergence. So I didn't understand the cost certain things cost me, like being in auditory stimulating environments. Holy crap, like it does deplete me. And like if I have the capacity or the bandwidth or the spoons, great, I can take it on. But there is a cost to me. And I did not interact with myself, but there was a cost to be in certain environments in my past. And now I'm extremely self-aware of myself because of the impact when I don't include the cost
Yep.
to me and my sensory differences and my communication differences and what that takes and my processing differences. And once I
Yeah.
actually include that, then I can actually have environments that work. But yeah, but I used to just, yeah, borrow from, the next day,
Tomorrow, the day
burn
after,
myself out, like,
the worst week,
stretch
the next.
myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
without refilling, refueling, pausing, grounding, regulating, and it would just escalate into like I'd get more agitation, more agitation, more agitation, which
Yeah.
is a great way to like differentiate too between like burnout, meltdown, and shutdown.
Yeah.
Because like I have the experience that like meltdown, for example, is more of a present moment experience, right? Like there's this,
Right. Yeah.
you're in an environment. Like for me, I have sensory differences. Everybody has their sensory profile. There's environments that really work for you. There's environments that really don't work for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they change, but I would put myself into these certain environments and I didn't realize that it was the environment that was actually impacting me. I just thought there was something deficient where I was, like there was
Right. Yes.
something like whatever. And so I would go into like a meltdown state. If I went to auditorily stimulated places and didn't take care of myself and didn't take care of myself and didn't take care of myself,
Yeah.
I would start to get into like a panic. Like there's actually like this agitation and this panic that would just keep rising and rising and rising to the point where it's like you get into like what a meltdown looks like. It looks like, you know, I would like close my ears, you could be rocking, you could be frustrated. I'd get angry. Sometimes it'd just be like, it was the only way I could get them to stop. Yeah. And the aggressiveness would rise, like, everyone get out! The scream, like my voice, like I felt so powerless and out of control. And there was such like a pain. Like for me, I feel like a pain inside of my body, like it hurts, like my skin underneath my skin actually would hurt. It felt like stabbing in my ears and stabbing in certain things. And when I was little, I would say things like, it's too loud or it's too this. And I would often get invalidated, or it was like, it's fine, or you're being too sensitive, or like you're just trying to control or manipulate the situation, or you're just X, Y, and Z. So I learned over the years of my life that something was deficient where I was, and I needed to still show up there, not realizing that it was the environment that just didn't work for me.
Right. You're like, there's something inside of me that isn't working. Everyone else can do this. Why can't I do this? This shouldn't be so hard for me. I'm the one who just has to suck it up, pull up my socks, whatever, put on my big girl underwear and
wear my big girl through. And like you're taught that, right? Like, and like, you know, and truthfully, even with my experience and like, you know, even with my own children, I will say I have done that to my own kids, right? Like, and I've now very, you know, new pathways, and I'm not doing that to my own children.
We're way more aware now, but there was a time and a place.
But truthfully, at the earlier years, it'd be like, that's not going on. That's crazy. How are you experiencing that? You know, so there was this invalidation or this, like, because I wasn't taking the time to understand their environment or getting that two people can have two entirely different experiences of the same environment.
Yes. Both can be true.
Yeah.
Both can be true. And for me, like, it took a really long time for me to be able to be like, okay, they're like, because a lot of parents they're like, well, I'm doing it for my kids. And I'm like, but you can do it in a way that is more sensory safe or more grounding for you. You don't have to do like, one of my parents was like, my kid wants to do the Battle of the Bands. He's very involved in this. And I'm like, well, there's a way around that. You can still support your child. You can go for their set. You could put your ear defenders on. We can take out, like, because I too have a really sensitivity to sound. So when I go to see my like my nephew's lacrosse game, I put my earplugs in. I make sure on the like change of periods, in between periods, I go out into the out of the arena, ground myself, come back in the 5 minutes, watch the next period, because like the yelling, the chanting, the sticks hitting the boards, I would be done after. And for me, it's like in the moment, sometimes it's not that bad. Like I don't feel like it's really overwhelming in the moment, but it's when I get home. It's when I get back to my bed that I have this sensory like overload in my body. And I don't know, I wouldn't even know how to explain it to anyone. I'm like, it's just this funky like sensation that runs through my body. And all I want to do is go like this, like get it out. And I don't know how else to explain it. But if I do those things, if I put my earplugs in, if I make sure I leave, if I make sure I eat something that isn't gonna like stress my belly out, and like then that adds to that body budget that the sound doesn't get to me near as much. And I don't come home and have that thing. But if that day I get stressed out or something happens, then I'm totally dysregulated and I don't have that body budget. I need to make the choice of like, do I want that funny sensation? Or do I just want to opt out this time?
And that's why I go back all the time, and with most of my coaching and things that I do, it so starts with awareness, right? Like, so everything starts, well, like meeting yourself and having compassion. I guess it starts with compassion in order to have awareness. You know, like you have your experience is valid. Having awareness of how your environment affects you, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and like getting like really understanding yourself, or if you're a parent, like supporting your child to understand themselves, or you starting to be the person that understands your child so it can be a bridge for them. Because it's so much is in the preparation. Like I love what you shared, like so much is in the preparation, because like with my sensory differences, I can handle a whole bunch of different environments if I'm prepared. It's like I can get the proper sleep. I can segment. It's like, wow, I'm going to take a 3-hour nap or like a downtime after I go do something like that. Or I'm going to go into like sensory deprivation. Or I'm going to have my weighted blanket and my whatever waiting for me when I or whatever. I'm going to put my
Yeah.
needs in. I'm going to put my needs in to support myself.
And that takes executive functioning. And when you're already burnt out, I totally want to acknowledge that you don't always have the
When you're in a
capacity to
meltdown
do that.
situation, yeah, well, when you're in a meltdown, and
Yeah.
this is the thing, like this is the great differentiation between burnout, meltdown, and shutdown. It's like when you're in a meltdown state, when that's happening, when you're getting bombarded, when you get escalated, when you're dysregulated, there you are, escalated, dysregulated. You have no ability for that observational awareness. You have no executive function. Those pathways, you're in survival. Your nervous system is in your traumatic response happening. Like you are in your fight, flight, fawn. Oh, actually, what was it? I loved it. Fight, flight, freeze, appease. I've never heard the appease before, but it's basically like the fawn. So you're in your fight, fight, freeze, appease. And for me, I'm a fight.
I go between the two. I sometimes fight. I often just be like, oh, it's not worth the effort. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
I'll just fawn.
Yeah, and then that's gonna, escalate and burn yourself. Like
So
your budget,
because I'm still on the budget from yesterday and tomorrow and the day after that.
More and more and more. You're just expanding the dysregulation that's happening. And that's what like meltdowns, so when you're not aware of yourself and when you're not advocating for yourself, or you don't put yourself in environments that work, and unfortunately in the world we live in, there's not a lot of alignment for environments that work for everybody. There's very much a neurotypical environment that everybody's expected to work inside of, which there's a real cost, well-being cost on neurodivergent people. There is a very real well-being cost on neurodivergent people, which that does not work in society and does not work for me in my commitments.
Yeah.
But so often neurodivergent people are left with environments that don't work, ongoing dysregulation that's building on top of each other, a meltdown, another meltdown. Every time you have a meltdown, it's an expenditure. It's a cost to you. There's a cost to how you perceive yourself, because like I don't work, I'm broken, I don't function, I'm deficient, is just reinforced. And there can be embarrassment or shame. Like I dealt with a lot of shame and embarrassment, especially my meltdowns can be pretty extreme looking and scary to other people. Like I look scary when I'm in a meltdown. And when I was little, I would be called tantrums, but it was meltdowns. These were this environment, alert, doesn't work. And so if you are a parent and your child's having what you're looking at as tantrums, reframing that to see it's a meltdown and there's needs aren't met, and that's their alert, something's not working here, is a great way to start inviting yourself to look for what could work. But so like those meltdowns, they pile on top of each other and have a real cost to the whole person for their future, but also for their energy and capacity. And if you don't take care of yourself and you keep going, you're going to then have what you're referring to as the burnout, right? You're going to have this backlog, this debt, this stretch, this past the point of capacity, exhaustion, functioning levels drop like crazy.
Yeah, things that normally you could do with barely any energy or any thought just take like the whole day to do, or like your whole, like something that would in like the spoons analogy would take 1 spoon now takes 4 spoons. Like when I think about getting even for neurodiverse people, like when I think of getting up in the morning, neurotypical people probably use 1 spoon to get breakfast, 1 to get out of bed, 1 to eat breakfast, 1 to get dressed. A neurodiverse person might use 3 spoons just to get, where someone with chronic pain might use 3 spoons to get out of bed, 2 spoons just to figure out what they're going to eat, then another 2 spoons to figure out, I need a spoon, a fork, where is it, how do I get it, put it in the right order. Like it takes all those extra spoons.
Yeah.
Because your brain is so foggy.
Like I know for me, showers hurt. Like it's like painful to hop into a shower. So it's a whole world of preparation for me to shower. That's why I love my baths. People that know me love I love my baths. But like
the most amazing bathtub too. I will not lie.
But I love what you're saying, right? Like some people, it takes a certain amount of energy, a very small amount of energy for what looks like basic functioning.
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of the shame can come in for neurodivergent people, because it looks like it takes us so much more for what people will call basic functioning. And it's like, well, it takes us what it takes us. right? Like other areas of our functioning can be far surpassing when we're at capacity, and we can be excelling in all kinds of things. And sure, some of what people look like as basic functioning takes different amount of energy capacity. But yeah, and like when you're burnt out, that just all increases. It's like, you know, it's like you are stretched, you're an elastic that's stretched past the point and it's just about to break. And it takes everything to, you know, convince yourself to get up out of bed. It takes everything to eat and to deal with the textures in your mouth and the tastes and the flavors. Like
and everything is so heightened that things that normally wouldn't bother you now are just like that much more, they feel stronger, or they feel more penetrating is what it's the only word I can think of.
Bombarding, like, like it feels like everything's more at you. And then what happens too is your system, like if you think as a biological level, you have this nervous system that's basically been continually escalated and activated and just regulated ongoingly with this like debt capacity that's happening. You're never actually getting regulation, breath, like any kind of space. You're just like going and you're pushing. And like when it's ongoingly doing that, your body at one point will start to numb out. Like it's got to turn itself off. And that's kind of what burnout is. It's like your body's way to survive. It's like it's got to shut things down. It's got to turn some things off. It's slowing you down because it can't take the continual bombardment. Like there's so much happening in your nervous system and like the capacity. Your body's saying alert, alert, slow everything down. And
then
like,
you get sick. Or you get like when your immune system takes a dive. And I always refer when people get really sick and stuff, I'm like, if the universe is telling you you've taken on too much, it's telling you to slow down, reevaluate, go back. Like even when I get sick, I'm like, okay, I have to reevaluate what I'm doing or what I'm.
Well, the other thing is too, you can get sick, right? Your immune system can be weakened, like you can be more susceptible and also more prone to depression, right? Like there's like this is where a lot of the mental health entwines with neurodivergence, because like when you're past that capacity and your body's going to a slower state out of survival, it's just trying to survive. It's actually depressing your whole system. It's not surprising that you're going to be in depressed states, which makes you prone to certain thoughts, fixated thinking. Your brain is like still going, looping, spiraling, you know, and you know, they're mental health conditions that you can, you know, definitely go talk to a mental health provider. I'm not saying don't see professionals, but also there is an underlying component of burnout that's often in the background of depression. From that capacity and stepping over it, your body's way to numb out or dissociate or to separate out of survival. And then so like that's, so we just talked about like meltdown, and then that's burnout. And then like the next one to really talk about is shutdown. So this can be a really scary place. You know, I have personally been in a shutdown state, and shutdown is basically burnout gone to the next level.
It's like can't get out of bed some days, can't, like I've seen various levels of, but it gets to the point where like normal functioning is, if you can do that, there's generally like your spouse, your partner, your other people are stepping in, because even you really want to, but you just can't. And it has nothing on you. It is not like it is like a
biological, biochemical things are happening in your body. Like there's a biochemistry. Your dopamine's getting affected. Your serotonin's affected. The way your body's firing off. Everything is, you know, when you're in that burnout, you're in that like getting depressed, closing off, slowing down states, and it's a biological response to your system's been overworked, overgoing, and it can't keep going. And if you keep trying to, and this is where it's so important when you're in burnout to address burnout and to get that it's burnout and take great care of yourself. And I get there's responsibilities in life, there's things we have to do. It's not an easy process. It's way easier to speak of than to actually do. And it's like I don't mean to.
And it's a long process. Like we often talk about, it is not just a weekend away. It's not going to cure the burnout. You have to change.
Burnout can be like a
everyday living.
6 months to 2 years. To recover and I'm not a professional, like that could even be longer. Like I'm just saying, like in a compassionate way with yourself, don't think this is an overnight process.
And I think this is a great also reminder for our kids. If we've like unknowingly, not knowing what we know now, and not like lots of people have like mainstream schooled and it's done a lot of trauma and there's a lot of burnout and like that your kid, because I honestly believe if you give them the space, and it might take 2 years and it's really scary to leave them there,
Yeah.
but when they're ready, they will start blossoming. They will start reaching
Mhm.
out and be like, I want to see some friends. I want to do this. I want to go out. But there might be a period where they totally shut down and like, I don't even want to leave my room.
Yeah, and that's a shutdown. And like looking at kids at
Yeah.
the burnout, and that's actually, I'm glad you're bringing up the kids' perspective because we're talking from an adult perspective so far. And like what shutdown looks like, or what burnout looks like for kids. So as a meltdown, it can look like a tantrum.
Yeah.
And as a burnout, like they're your kid, like think of their perspective. Like there they are going to school every day. So if
Meeting all
they,
these demands,
yeah,
all these sensory overloads every day.
expectations, demands, growth, stimulation, overstimulation,
Hormones going wild once they hit
not just the
teenage
regular
years.
day-to-day things of just a human and humany,
Yeah.
all the changing, all of the transitioning, all these things that like neurotypical world considers as basic, easy, whatever, isn't easy, right? So the expectation is for them to put out all this expenditure, all this expenditure, and all this expenditure, and there's a cost. So, you might find your child in certain states when they're home. They might, have, really stimulated, overstimulated states. They might have really understimulated states. They might be really aggressive and assertive. They might be disengaged. Like, this is the starting point of what burnout starts to look like, right? Like burnout sometimes doesn't look like somebody's just lying in bed and burnt out. Burnout is like their system has been bombarded and is continually overactivated and dysregulated. Could look like
That's the, yeah, it's that frantic what's next, gotta keep moving,
anxiety.
what gotta know, gotta like, okay, I do this and this and this and this, and it's like that in overactive ADHD. Like that's when I think of those words, it's just like they're like go 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 go, like they always know what needs to be done next, and like even if it can be done tomorrow, they're doing it today because they just need to keep moving. Because, and it makes me think of when I was producing too much cortisol. You have this
Mm-hmm.
rush through your body and you're like, I don't know what to do with it. I gotta move it. I gotta get it out.
Yeah.
And that's how
That's what
they,
I think some stimming is, right? Like I know
yeah,
for me, I need to stim in order to like output. Like it's an outputting because there's too much happening, or I've passed my capacity, or it's a
yeah,
way to regulate myself because I'm dysregulated. And so it's like I can pace, or I want to move,
yeah,
or I have certain movements I need to do, and it helps output. So like burnout could look like excessive outputting. Burnout could
yes,
look like excessive stimming. Burnout could look in lots of different ways than just lying down
yeah,
stagnant, right? So I just want, parents to really get that, because if you see your child continually in some kind of activated state, you could relate to that as like a burnout, like
yeah.
they're ongoingly going past their capacity. They're
And
ongoingly
we're on the way to
debt.
shut down,
Exactly. They're
right? Like
ongoingly going to debt, debt.
we're only can borrow so many, like so much body
There
budget can
will
only
be a
handle so much.
wall.
Yeah,
There will be a wall. And this is like, so moving into shutdown, and this is going to get really serious for me, like
yeah,
really quickly, just to state something, is this is where the danger, or the statistics come in with neurodivergence. There is 13%, no, it's 13 times, not
I
13%,
was gonna say
13
it's
times, not 13,
considerably higher.
13 times higher suicide rates with neurodivergence.
Yeah,
Like 13 times higher suicide rates. This is where the risk of suicide comes in. And I'm just going
yeah,
to say this straightforward. So, a little warning for people that are
a little
listening.
blunt.
Like, I have reached
Okay,
those states
yeah,
where, I was very embarrassed and ashamed of it because I have kids, and like, why would I contemplate that? But like, it gets so painful in your body. Your body wants to shut down. You are past burnout. There is like nothing is giving you relief. Your body cannot go forward another moment. That's what shutdown feels like,
yeah,
right?
it's like
So
you can't even, like you've tried all the things and nothing is giving you any relief. It's
yeah,
like, and you always think there's something you have to do to fix it.
yeah,
And sometimes there's doing isn't actually helping.
it's usually not. It's usually not. But because again, we've been taught generally in this neurotypical generalized society that the problem's us, not
Yes.
the environment, right? And so, and this is where too the suicidal ideations and tendencies can come in, because it's like, I'm broken, something's wrong, I can't keep up, I can't do this, I don't know how, I can't keep going.
Everybody keeps invalidating. I've been invalidated since I was 5, that I was too sensitive, that I'm, yeah.
And so it just gets to this point that shutdown can look in a lot of ways, and it can be very, it's very serious. So like the only reason I'm saying what I'm saying is like, if you or your child is experiencing a shutdown state, please take this very seriously, because this is their body not functioning. Their well-being is so past burnout, past capacity, past the recovery state. Like recovery is not even available in shutdown. Like when you're in shutdown, restoration and recovery is past the point. Your body is in such depleted state. It's just literally shutting down. It's like systems are shutting down. And I like to differentiate between the meltdown, the burnout, and the shutdown, so that you can get the layers and the importance of intervention, the importance of that stop, that pause, that meet yourself and have compassion, and throw out every freaking neurotypical expectation that you have.
That's right. Brick and mortar school doesn't have to be brick and mortar. Taking a year off isn't horrible. If that's what you need to do, you can do grade 10 in grade 11. Like there's so many things. There is nothing that if your gut says this is what I need to do for me or my child, you're probably right.
Yeah. And if your child has hit a shutdown state, it needs high level attention.
Yeah.
It needs high level attention, high level of understanding, awareness, relearning, and redoing things. And and hey, I'm a walking example. You can recover from shutdown. So it's I don't want to leave you all dire that it's just horrible.
But it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight.
No, just like burnout can take like 6 months plus. Shutdown, you first have to get to it's almost you have to work out backwards, right? So you're in shutdown. The burnout's the better phase of shutdown. So
the more more operable.
Work your way back out and up, right? Like that's the issue. So when you're in a shutdown state, the first thing I would offer is to get that shutting down is good for you right now, because it's the way your body needs to recover. You can't even do anything in recovery. It's past the point. It has to, it's like going to sleep. You have to refuel. You have to recharge. You have to get enough energy back to even recover.
Yeah.
So like if you are experiencing shutdown, or your child is experiencing shutdown, the best things you could do are really looking at your environment for your sensory aspects, and really taking out any sensory dysregulating aspects to that person. Really letting lots of sleep and recovery. You are going to need a lot of sleep and recovery. It's going to look like you're depressed. It's going to look like you're in a thing. Let yourself be, truthfully. And I don't mean that in a negative. Let yourself be, knowing that you're not going to stay there.
Yeah. It's radical acceptance. This is where I am, and the only way to move forward is to let my body do what it needs to do to recover. And what it needs, what it's telling me is, and listen to it. And it's a really hard place to be in, but being able to create that support network around you, your partner, your spouse, your whatever, your maybe it's your mom helping you parent a child. I don't know what your living situation might be or your support network looks like. But it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I need more help. How can I get more help? And you in the shutdown, you probably can't even advocate for that. You have to rely on those other people to advocate. And this is where a lot of my job has come in the last little while, is advocating for parents who are close to that state, where it's like, okay, so let's talk to the social worker. Let's talk about where can we find extra funding? Where can we find other resources for you? It's okay to have all of these different things.
How can the day look entirely different, right? Sometimes we get attached to how the day must go. You wake up at this time, you have breakfast at this time, you do this, you do that. Throw all of that out the freaking window. Seriously, you might need to wake up at 11.
Yeah.
You might need to order takeout, or just eat not as healthy, like, you know, you might need to eat more processed, like, you know, and it sucks because it might not be what you want. And, you know, I'm not saying don't nourish your body. Nourishing your
Yeah.
body and moving and doing things that are great for you is helpful. That's helpful at a burnout state. At a
Yeah.
shutdown state, like,
You have
the
to make
point,
everything as easy and accessible as possible
yeah,
without judgment around what that looks like.
yeah, you got to let go of that judgment
Put
because
the dishwasher on twice.
yeah.
I
And
don't know.
actually staying to your environment or your community, like the
Yeah.
people around you. So if you're a parent and you have children, you know, it's like actually saying, hey, kids, I am dealing with this shutdown state, and however you want to frame it or word it,
Yeah.
that's appropriate. But to say to them, so as a family, we're gonna do things really differently, and I need your help. We're all gonna help together, and we're all
Yeah.
gonna like reorganize here. If you have a spouse, it's like, I'm sorry, this has to take friggin'
And
priority.
I want to remind parents that in that moment, you're teaching your children it's okay to look after yourself. Because when
Yeah.
you keep pushing yourself and you keep doing it, all you're doing is modeling that I give up everything for everyone else and I am the last on the list.
Yeah, no.
It is not a bad thing to be like, you know what? This is what I need. This is what my body is feeling. And that is okay. So
Yeah,
that when they feel that way, they can step up and say, hey, you know what? This is what I need, or this is what
yeah.
my body is telling me, and have it validated.
Like, let's make needs a great word. Like, this is
Yeah.
like, I grew up learning that like needs are a bad thing. Like, if I need something, I'm somehow
Needy.
insufficient, I'm needy, I'm something like, you know, you're
Yep.
not supposed to have needs. You're not supposed to have needs.
You're
No,
supposed to
let's
be totally
need,
self-sufficient from the day you pop out.
I know, like, let's make needs a great thing. And like, you have the opportunity to teach your kids that, you know, them advocating for their needs is the most powerful place they could ever stand,
That's
right?
right.
Like, because when our needs are when our needs are met, we get to have like this floor underneath of us, right? And I've really learned, like, I am responsible for keeping that floor under me by learning myself, being aware of myself, and having my needs in. And then I have this grounded, great floor under me. And as soon as I start not being aware of my needs or abandoning my needs or not advocating for my needs, my floor starts to crumble, right?
Yep.
And so this is what you get to
And the
teach your
holes you
child.
start falling through.
Yeah, potholes,
Yep.
you know, and so it's what you
Everything
get to
seems a
teach
little rougher.
but like, you know, teaching our children that like them having this awareness, like they're growing into their autonomous free agent adults that get to advocate
Yeah.
for themselves out in the world. So them understanding who they are, how they operate, learning how to speak their needs, ask for their needs, build their needs, help support other people's needs, be community or kinship
Yeah.
with those needs. Like, they're learning really great skills in that. So, you know, if you even have to say, we're all taking a year off,
Yeah.
everything's changing, and it's all going to be needs focused, that could be the best gift you're giving yourself and your family, even though it
Exactly.
looks radical, crazy, and like nuts.
And nobody else has to understand it. I'm taking
No,
my family. We're taking everything off the plate. I know financially it might not be the best idea, but this is what we need to move forward. And I get it. Not all of us, I'm going to say the majority of people don't have that luxury of taking a year off
yeah.
and shutting down and
But seriously, my
revamping.
advice to those people would be, and this sounds harsh, and I'm sorry, like, find a way. Seriously, like, if you need to
Or
quit
get
your
as
job,
close
sell
to
your
that as
house,
possible.
and move to a beach where you pay X amount of money a month so you can just have some downtime and replenish, that is a worthwhile investment. And that is so privileged sounding. And so I do get that, like, it's not always available. You don't have it. I would just say, please get as resourceful or find people around you that can be resourceful on your behalf to brainstorm ideas and ways so that the demands, the responsibilities can be off your plate.
And there's so many resources out there that you might not be aware of to support you and your family. And sometimes they're not even like, lots of people are like, well, I've talked to my social work and government, but I'm like, if you go into some of those Facebook groups, they have funds for people in places like that. I see posts. For one group has is it Monday or one day of the week? It's like a help out or ask for what you need, give what you can kind of post. So people are like, hey, we're really struggling. I'm not working. We could use some like gift cards for milk or whatever, diapers, whatever. And in these groups, and people are like, oh yeah, we could do that. And they like coordinate through the group. So there is a lot of places that you might not think of, but like by asking your support network, they might have connections or things, like it's
Yeah.
surprising how especially the small communities can pull
Yeah.
together when you make your needs known.
Yeah. And this is where the like do everything please, and it's way easier said than done, and I really
Oh, yeah.
do get that, but do everything in your power to release any of the shame or embarrassment or guilt around it. Like, you're human, your child is human. We live in a world that's like increasingly over demanding and overproduction and not really
Yeah.
functional and sustainable and neurotypical and not really meeting everybody's needs where they are. Lots of people get into these states. There is no shame in it. So because what happens when we have the shame or the guilt, we don't talk about it, we don't share about it, and
Yeah.
then it closes off getting those resources that we could really utilize and need, right? And so please, like, no, you are not alone. There's nothing you did wrong or bad or should be embarrassed or guilty from. You are where you are. You knew what you knew. You are now in a whole new learning process, and talk about it. Please say, help, I'm struggling. I'm burning out, I'm in shutdown, I'm not functioning, and I don't know what to do. Who, like, just
Yeah.
start, because you might not know what you need. Like, because this is why we want to have this conversation, is because when you're in shutdown, you are so past the point of being
Yeah.
able to articulate, ask for help or thing. You are in a
You
crappy
can't even
situation.
you can't even ask for what you need because it's too far out there. It's too much brain power. You can't even put the ducks in a row to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. And this
All
is
you
where
know
there's
is that I'm here and I can't move.
yeah. And this is where real breakdowns happen
Yeah.
in people's lives, and there's a real cost and impact. And this is where the importance goes back to those meltdown and burnout stages. Like, if you ever experience meltdowns, take that as your signal that that's something not working, and stop everything. And because even after a meltdown, you can come out of it, you can have your capacity, you can have your regulation, you can look, you can have executive functioning and thinking. So once you start experiencing some meltdowns, start there with that being your alert, and you actually have a chance to pivot and have new spaces. And we're going to be doing a workshop next month on environments for thrive, and these are some of the things that we're going to be teaching, is what you can do in your day-to-day existence and life and routines and environments,
because it really is a life shifting change. It's a lifestyle change. When like it's
highly a lifestyle change.
It's not, it's even a bigger lifestyle shift than when they say you adopt a new lifestyle in the way of eating or something. Like, this is a whole environmental, and it takes time to shift it and your own thinking around it. And how, like, one of the biggest things that come up a lot for me and my clients is like, no one else is doing it this way, but this is what your family needs. It's okay that no one else is doing it this way. And I'm going to guarantee you that there probably are somewhere somebody is doing much the same or similar thing. We just haven't found them yet. Or you might be the example that sparks someone else to do something similar. I'm never going to say that it's going to be the same, because every family is so different, but you're going to find what works for your family, and then you just got to own it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong. There's no shame in it. You have the capacity you have the sensory profile you have, the communication profile you have. You're you. You are the dynamic you that works in certain environments. You can thrive in certain environments, and other environments has a cost and a depletion rate. And it's just to start to understand and have awareness, and to start to care, to build environments that do work, versus trying to push yourself past capacity again and again, or having your child get pushed past capacity again and again. Because unfortunately, it breaks my heart. And this is where I think both Kat and I are very passionate about this topic, and this whole neurodivergence or divergence zone, is we see the stereotypical normal way neurodivergents are interacted with and expected of. And it is not healthy. It's not great. It's not forwarding. It's expecting them to adjust and contort and somehow make themselves more typical. And there's a real cost, an ongoing cost to their general overall health and well-being, how they advocate and support their life, and everything about going forward. So it's a real shift. It's a fundamental paradigm shift that we talk about here. It's like, there is zero wrong with you. Zero. This is not a pathology. This is, nothing is wrong. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be cured. Nothing needs to be corrected. You are your dynamic you.
Yeah. And like when we talk about, we often talk about like, and I really wish, and it's moving in that way. Society is moving slowly, very
there's
slowly.
a lot more conversations about this happening,
about moving things. But right now, our goal, like my goal as a support to a family with neurodiverse needs, or like people, humans, is like, how can I help them navigate this world that they have to navigate? Unfortunately, I wish I could change the world to be easier, but how do I help them navigate the world that inevitably is right here, right now, our reality, in a way that depletes them the least?
Or like, a way that they can thrive in. Like, how can they take their power back? How can they have ownership here and start to invent their own world around them? Like, instead of you having to meet, like, I love what you do, because like it's like there is this neurotypical world, and you can choose at what participatory level you come into. You have a lot of choice and selection actually in the matter, more than
and you think. But it still, for me, feels unfair that we that you have to put so much extra energy and thought and process into going to the grocery store, because the grocery store might not have sensory safe time, or what. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you want to interact with the world, you have to time it at a certain time, and you have to make sure you have all these other things done, which is a necessity right now. But in a perfect world, you should be able to walk in somewhere and be like, you know what, professor, these lights are not working for me. Can I go to another room and join from Zoom, and not have anybody look twice at you? Like, having these accommodations shouldn't be a big effort or exception. It should be the norm.
Yeah. Well, I think this is where we're double-headed about it, right? Like, it's like one thing we love to work on is how can we make that more normal, right? Like, how can we spread the word and bring leadership and actually alter the way the typical world operates and have it neurodivergent friendly? Like, really, like that actually is like friendly for all. Like, how about a world
let's make it human friendly?
Yeah, human friendly, and like their needs get to be in. Needs get to be in, needs get to be in, and needs get to be in. And there's a real what so right now that, you know, unfortunately the world isn't at the state that we would love to have it in. And unfortunately, you know, people are in situations and circumstances that are very real. And, you know, there's financial obligations, there's parenting obligations, there's community obligations, like, oh my gosh, career, job, like there's a lot of pressures and outside circumstances that are very, 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 real. Very real.
Yeah.
Very
and
real.
Some are non-negotiable.
Some there is not a lot of them.
I think they're more negotiable than you might think.
Yeah.
But
there's still a what's so about it. There's still a like, it's still here. And so we do like to work with, okay, let's take a look at what actually is, like what is here, what are you working and operating inside of? Look for rooms where there's a bit of negotiation so that, you know, we can adjust the environment that way slightly. But we really look more of like over here with you, with me. You know, here I am. How can I be aware of myself? And if this is your child, how can you teach your child to be aware of themselves? And it starts with you getting curious and you being the bridge to be aware for themselves. That will start teaching them how to be aware of themselves and looking and what questions to ask or what to look for themselves. Getting them feeling comfortable and you feeling comfortable with having needs. And then articulating your needs in the capacity that you can. And setting up environments that really work for you, at least so that when you come home, you have like a sanctuary place. You have a place to refuel and to ground, you know, and then you also can start to learn, like it starts here with me, and then it's my home. And then you can start to like the outside world.
We can branch out a little bit. How can I find people who fill my cup or who understand, who I don't have to mask around? Who can I be like, and just your community slowly grows.
Yeah. What kind of accommodations need to be put in? What accommodations are available, first of all? What accommodations do I need? How do I have them happen? Like, so there's a process. This isn't an overnight conversation.
And the more you do it, the more aware you come, and the more you like, now when I go into loud places, like there's just little things like in our workshop, we'll talk about like the sensory kits that just come with us. My earplugs live in my purse. They're just little tiny, I mean, I have the ear defenders for when it's really loud, but my ear, they're meant for swimming, but they're enough to muffle most things for me. These little, I want to say plastic wax that I stick in my ears, just enough to muffle things, but they're just in my purse, because sometimes you're walking down the street, especially in Victoria, and some random band breaks out in the street and you're like,
which is great. And
lovely music. crazy people everywhere. I think I'm going to move over in this corner and put my earplugs in so I can listen and enjoy, but not be amongst that craziness.
Yeah. So it is like learning what your needs are so that you can bring your needs with you, have your needs
Yeah.
met, and so that you're not stretching yourself past your bandwidth and capacity. So you're not going into debt. So you're not going into burnout. So you're not even having to face meltdowns. Like I used to tolerate having a lot of meltdowns as if that was just the way I was built and the way that had to happen. And now it's
Right.
like I now newly see for myself if
I
I'm
have a
having
choice.
a meltdown, something's not working and I need to
Yeah.
make some adjustments. If my child is having even one meltdown, that is a stop everything because like I'm so clear of the cost of
Yeah.
burnout and unfortunately shutdown. Like it goes to dangerous places like this, and I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's just
No, it's a
very
real,
dangerous
yeah.
places, painful places that take a long time to recover from. There's a real cost and impact. So stepping over that meltdown state doesn't work.
Yeah.
So your
No, it
child is
doesn't,
having
don't slide it under the rug. Don't be like, oh, well, they'll just desensitize and get better at it.
oh,
They're
please
not
don't
gonna.
desensitize your child. Please, like if I can give
No.
one message to any parent listening right now, please, please, please stop everything you're doing with desensitization. It all it does is have them contort into something now and they will pay for it later. They
Yeah.
will pay
Every time,
for it later. Do not do that.
every time you expose them to that, you are rewiring their brain so that they hit that higher flight faster. You're just making that neural pathway stronger
The
and
cost on
more
their nervous
painful,
system.
more for that child. It is just going to be a bigger reaction. I agree. I am 110% with you there. Desensitization, the only time I will even fathom the idea is if it's something the child really wants to do
Yes.
themselves.
If
And
it's
they're like, I
something
really
an
want to be in
adult
this
wants for
environment.
themselves or a child wants for themselves, but even if it's a child, really look,
Yeah.
like first look at what other accommodations, what
What
are
other
other
things we can
ways
do
to
to make
have
that
what they want.
more pleasurable, like less impactful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
I really am about feeling good in your body. It is very important that that gets to be a guiding compass, and we can teach our children
And
that as a guiding
yeah,
compass.
there is nothing more important than feeling safe and calm in your body. That's
Yeah.
number one.
Number one, period, always. They get
Yeah.
to learn how to feel great in their body. They get to learn that's their compass, that's their direction. How do you
That
navigate
needs to be
feel
their
great?
normal state, not one you just get into once in a while. This needs to be their baseline is comfort, safety, calm.
Yeah, they get that. That is a non-negotiable. So so this is the great thing because like if somebody's in a meltdown or your child, you notice your child, maybe you don't understand meltdowns yet, and you are like, oh, my child has lots of tantrums, or my
Yeah.
child, is aggressive. My child, I get a lot, like I've heard a lot, like my child just comes and like throws things, like they're just
Yeah.
throwing things. That is a meltdown.
Yeah.
That is a meltdown. That something is not working. Something is past capacity. Either there's a processing something going on, a communication difference that's not being able to get expressed. So there's a frustration, or there's a sensory difference happening. There's a difference happening that is not being adjusted and accommodated for. And that's their way to say, I don't know what to do, and I need to get a different response.
I need this out of my body. I need to hit something. I need deep pressure. I've got kids who hit things, throw things, curl up. I've got a couple that will roll up in like tight balls and like roll on the floor. They're seeking that deep pressure or that motion, and any of those vestibular things are calming to the nervous system. That's why they're happening.
Yeah.
It's not
So
controllable. I'm not choosing to do this.
No.
It's an automatic response.
Yeah. And so if your child's doing some kind of behavior or some kind of outputting that's, not working, like, throwing something and hitting the TV and hitting people, like there is a not working component, but they have a physical need that is happening for them right now that they need to have. So redirect to something that is safe, but get that there is a need that they get, like to ask somebody to stop throwing or stop doing that is not accessible. It's so not accessible to them. It's like asking somebody to jump 50 feet in the air. They don't have access to it.
Yeah. And it's a lot like the stimming too. They're like, I'm like, is the stimming bothering something? Is it hurting anybody? Is it like, if it's not, because when you shut down a stim, it's only going to manifest in something bigger, deeper,
Yeah.
in some other way. And most of the time, if you stop the physical movement, it's going to manifest in their body in a horrible way.
Yeah. So then you can start to look at like what is a safe way, what is a, and even like depending on the age and
Yeah.
communication and availability of your child, you know, you can engage them into this inquiry and conversation. Or if they don't have that capacity or availability, you can like observe and look and try some things on, but like
Yeah.
looking for the closest to the match safe way. So if your child is throwing something, find a way that they can throw something safely. So they're still getting that output, but they're getting it in a like
Target and some balls.
exactly. But they're
Like,
getting it in a more
yeah.
regulated state, right? Like they're not, it doesn't have to get to a meltdown. They're able to find a tool that they can get the output. But then still notice, and this is something, this might be, you know, I don't know, this is where I come from. But still notice the fact that you have that much outputting to have to do. So this
Yeah.
is where like even with stimming, like stimming is great. Never stop a stim. Stim away, stim
Yeah.
friendly, find ways that work. But just notice if you are stimming a lot, that's your body's trying to output. So you might like, yes, let the stim happen.
What's causing that output? What's causing that rise in cortisol or hormones or whatever in their body that's making them do that?
Yeah.
What's the trigger or accumulate and it's not always easy. It's sometimes
Yeah.
an accumulation of things that lead to, and that's like the volcano, the cherry on the top, however you want. It could be multiple things of like, I didn't sleep, I'm hungry, I need to make a bowel movement. Like
Past
there's
capacities all over the place. But the point is, like when stims, like you know, what we have a natural level of stims, right? Like that. Hey, that's just me outputting. Things are fine. It's just a little bit past. I'm gonna have these stims happening. But if you notice the stims increase, or they're more dysregulated, or panicked,
they're
or
longer.
longer,
Yeah.
just yeah, that's the alert. Um, Past capacities are happening. And if past capacities keep happening ongoingly, that's where you start to risk then that next phase of
Yeah.
burnout, right? So if we can get more pausing and observing and accommodation happening at that meltdown or outputting or just stim phase, you are going to be able to prevent the real impactful dangerous spaces that can happen for us.
And it's one of those things like when as because I'm reading this differently wired,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really great at like it basically the whole book is like question everything you thought you knew about parenting or you thought you knew about yourself.
Yeah.
And let's reframe it. How does this work for your family? How does this like let's undo all this learning, these preconceived ideas we have around the world and society and how things should be. And it's just like how and like it just opens my eyes to how many things that I'm like, you know what? I'm still masking. I'm still not being not still myself at 40 something years old, not showing up in a way, don't get me wrong, getting 100 times better,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still like some of these questions I look at and I'm like, how am I not being honest about how I'm really feeling? Or how am I not being honest about the implications of saying yes to helping this person out or doing this thing? How am I
Yeah.
not articulating what that, like you say, the cost of that is to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it,
And it's an ongoing, right? Like,
yeah,
truthfully, this is a human conversation, right? Like, it's
it
not
is.
just into
Yeah,
neurodivergence. And I would say it just becomes extremely important
yeah.
with neurodivergence because, like, the cost to a neurodivergent is high. But as
And
a
it's,
human in general, us being
yeah,
self-aware and understanding our needs and our capacities, it's a very important conversation. Learning how to take care of ourselves, to tend ourselves,
yeah,
to give ourselves our ground, to be regulated, to be in calm spaces, calm, safe in our body, have that sovereignty of our being, have the autonomy and the agency and the advocacy. I think this is a human conversation that we want for every human. Just
yeah,
it is it's disheartening. It's sad. I don't like it. The cost on neurodivergence in this neurotypical world and the importance of that self-awareness. And again, it is a bit unfair, right? Like it does put
yeah,
a lot of ownership, and in some ways, it's great. We get to get really highly self-aware. And we get to really highly advocate for ourselves. We get to learn things, and truthfully, like I have just turned 13-year-old son who's autistic, and over the last, 7 years. Like I came from very like pathology model at first. I knew what I knew and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I got the diagnosis and I did all the right things and I went to go
Did
that.
what I
And
was
then
told, and
yeah. And then it was like, this is not working. It was so against every instinct of mine of the kind of parent I am. And it's like, I can't do this to my child. I can't, like, this is no, like, no, 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 no. And so we then pulled everything back and like really got focused on self-awareness and advocating for needs. And, and it was a process. It wasn't an overnight thing.
yeah,
But with each month and with each 6 months and with each year, like milestones happened and things grew and came capacity. And what is crazy is he has some older brothers, and his older brothers were just even saying like, wow, what a self-aware young man this is. He is just turned 13 and he deals with what he deals with his sensory differences, his communication differences, and his processing differences. None of that has changed. He's still wired the exact same way he's always been wired. It just hasn't been made wrong. And we get to meet him for where he is, and his environment gets to accommodate him, include him. It's not even accommodation, it gets to include him.
And now he has he's now at the point where, like, because I've worked with Szara's son for a little over 2 years now, maybe even 3, I don't know. But he's gone from, now that he's aware of his needs and that they're like, he's so much more aware of my needs. When we get on and play a game, he's actually, the other day I got lost in the game with him because I was like actually really, I don't do video games, but this one I was really engaged in because he was taking care of me. He's like, oh, I'll help you. I'll teach you. It's okay. You don't know how to do this. You haven't practiced yet. I'm going to show you. Do you want to watch this? And it was just like this blossoming of, wow, he's starting to be able to take my perspective and not have judgment that I'm bad or wrong or for not being able to do it. He realizes that I just don't practice. He's like, it's okay, Kat. I'll help you. You just need to practice.
Like, and like, he really gets people have different. And that's okay. It's actually expected. Like,
he doesn't expect me to practice anymore. There was a time and a place where he wanted me to practice in between sessions. You need to get better at this fishing game, Kat. You need to practice at least an hour a day. And now he's like, I get that you don't really like this. And he appreciates that I play video games because it's something he likes. And it's something we can connect over. And he now appreciates that. And I can see him doing that for other people. Like, we have conversations when we're playing games about, oh, well, my brother really likes this, so I think I'm going to do this with him. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I think I want to do this because he likes it. It's a way of connecting.
Like, rewind, back at the beginning of his diagnosis, we were told to like make him do these things. Right? Like, he was like, it was make him practice, make him
force
go
him.
To people's dates, force him. And like everything was like, it didn't work.
Because he lacked skills. He didn't have it. It was overwhelming. The whole process of that was overwhelming.
Where he was. Like, it just did not meet him where he was. Whereas now, we don't even work, like, we don't work on those things. We don't work on social skills. We don't work on anything.
They naturally come.
Work on.
When we build their foundation and we build all those other skills of awareness in themselves and all those other things, all those things, when they are ready, they start to expand on themselves. They will. Like your son, I remember you didn't even push for reading. He wasn't interested. He found other ways. He was really great at getting information. He was a wealth of information. But then one day he decided he wanted to read. And then from that day on, it just built on it. And he decided, and it was something he wanted. And now there's no stopping him.
But meaning like he presents very PDA, right? Like very demand avoidant is how he presents. So the more we would have an expectation or a demand on him, that just did not meet him where he was. That did not
further and further away.
And it escalated him, his nervous system, he went dysregulated. So instead of like, okay, he is his own autonomous being, he is his own advocate, he's his own free agent. Yes, I'm his mother and I still, I'm still responsible.
I want to keep him safe. I want to keep him
we still have goals and objectives inside of like any parent with their child and wanting them to have a healthy, functioning life and being out in the world. But it's
but allowing them to do that at their own pace.
Well, empowering them to do that for themselves and then meeting them where they are and like being open-minded. So that is probably the biggest thing too, is like, being willing to let go of the neurotypical standards, being willing to let go of expectations, being willing to let go of how one process works. Like, we've been taught that there's one way.
Like letting go of your need of what friendships for your child looks like.
Yeah.
Letting go of what you think education should look like for them.
Yeah.
And have their input. Like, that's why I loved working with you and your son, Szara, is because you're like, his natural rhythm is he doesn't get up till 11. Okay, so let's honor his teenage natural rhythm and not start anything till 1.
Yeah.
Like, why am I like heating my head or swimming upstream when I totally don't have to?
Yeah.
Easier on him, easier on us.
Yeah. And there's still like rules and responsibilities in the house inside of like, we have like, we don't hit, we don't hurt people. Everybody gets the right and freedom for an autonomous living, like we respect each other, Like there's still guidelines and there's still a framework to live inside of. So it's not just the Wild West here.
And there's definitely some of those. Yeah, there's some of those other responsibilities that came with that too. If you're not getting up to 11, you can't expect me to make you breakfast. Yeah. I've got work, I've got my things, these things are happening. So you're going to have to make your own breakfast. Like, there's all these independence things that came along with that shift of just honoring where he is, being like, okay, so you want this shift, we're going to honor it. But that also comes with responsibility. And we knew that your son could handle that. It wasn't like asking him to make his own breakfast was too much executive functioning. It wasn't too much of a leap to ask him. Because for some kids, it might have been.
Yeah, well, and it took something then to create, okay, then what would you need to have that happen? Yeah. Right? And maybe that was, I did something before, or prepped something, or worked with him to prep something. And like, so you can keep meeting them where they are and you negotiate, right? Like, it's not just a quick yes or no. It's like, it really actually brings a negotiation and like, again, everybody's needs getting to be met. What does it look like for everybody's needs to get met? And it's not a simple and easy conversation. It's not black and white. And this is where, it's not for the faint of heart. It really is. And the rewards, though, are so worth it because the skills they're learning in the process, they're learning about advocating for themselves. They're learning about what they need. They're learning about, again, especially for somebody demand avoidant,
their comfort zones and where they can stretch and when they can stretch and how to stretch and when they need to back off.
Yeah. And, like somebody who's demand avoidant too, like it really gives them some power of like how things are going to go. And it doesn't mean everything happens their way. It gets they're responsible for certain things. So like they just learn so much in this process that, just being a yes or a no or a black and a white or this one way thinking is a disservice often to our youth, right? Like really like let them have more say at the table, but still bring your own, whatever the own reality is of the situation. Like you might work and that might not be possible, right? Like I have the privilege and, he gets to learn from home and, I work from home. So there gets to be a little bit more flexibility in what we offer. Sometimes that's not available, but then just say what the parameters are and let them brainstorm. Like my thing always is, my thing is always, okay, well, here's my concerns. Here's why I don't think it can work. I always like to say, actually, what my line is like, I really want to say yes here. I really want to say yes. I don't know if I can, because this is a concern, this is a concern, this is a concern. Just tell them what the concerns are.
And be like, and I know you are exceptionally good at this, being like, oh, you want to try that? Okay, let's try it. Let's see if it works. But know that we're going to come back, reevaluate. If it doesn't work, we might have to shift and change it. But I'm willing to give your way a try. Let's see if this works.
And it's like helps them actually think of what the parameters are. Like Bill's great problem solvers and like, and truthfully, like, every neurodivergent, is very different, but there is a very beautiful, different way of thinking that is often right behind there. And so like, he can think better than I can think on almost everything. Like, it's like I give him the parameters and his brain is just like solution based. Like he's just like well, this could, and he can come up with 5 different solutions. And it's like, all right, well, which one do you want to try on? But he got the opportunity to excel and succeed and to think and to navigate and to also through it, he also got to work with people. Like he got to work with me on something and he got to, learn those skills. And so And again, these are the ways you start to prevent meltdowns, right? Because
Yeah.
meltdowns often, especially with anybody presenting with any PDA aspect, which PDA is pathological demand avoidance. I don't like the word pathological in there personally. I would reinvent that to be something different. But anyways, it's demand avoidance. I don't
But,
like
and I mean, at the very, like, when, no matter what you call it, it is their body being slammed in a fight or flight.
Yeah.
I don't care what you call it. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
And
so
yeah.
when somebody presents that way, all of these, like if you look at a youth's life, like look at a 5-year-old's life, look at a 2-year-old's life, look at a 10-year-old's life. How many times do they don't have power in the situation? How many times are they told what to do, forced what to do? Something's coming at them. They have to go along with it. They have to move with us. They have to come to the store and go here and go there and come back. And it's like for anybody that has any PDA here, this is like continual bombardment of your nervous system. So you are going to get tantrums. You are going to get behaviors. You're going to get things that don't work. You're going to get outputs because their system is ongoingly bombarded and in a nervous system response, a dysregulated state.
And that's when you really have to drop, and it's hard to drop into as a parent and become really aware of the surroundings, of the environment, because and pick up on the patterns. Like if you wrote down every time your child at 2 had a meltdown, you might find a pattern of like it's every time we get in the car, or it's every time at 11 o'clock, or whatever that pattern might be. But if you're just going from day to day, you're not gonna find, and you're like, well, shift this. What if we went to the grocery store after their nap versus before their nap all the time? I don't know. I'm just saying,
and
like,
truthfully, as a parent, like that's what's expected as a parent. Like, a lot of professionals will say, like, start documenting and journaling and like noticing the patterns and stuff.
It's not always
Make
doable.
me pull out my hair. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
that.
already past capacity and like, ah. So what becomes great though, this is where our workshop that we're going to be offering for Environments to Thrive, it bypasses that, right? Like, yes, you can, like, please, like there is value. I don't mean
and there are some parents who work that way. There are some very analytical people who like charts and like finding patterns and
see. Like there are patterns to see. So it's not to say that isn't true, because like you can find it that way. Sometimes though, when you're dealing with the meltdowns happening or you're dealing with those escalated states,
you don't have the capacity to.
You yourself don't have the capacity for that kind of observation or slowing down, or even just to remember to carry a journal around or write anything down. Your own functioning goes diminished. So I would try to have the function at that level. I didn't. And so this is where going more for the Environments to Thrive. This is where like any parent that's out here hearing this, like come out to this workshop, because Environments for Thrive is really about coming back home, coming back to ourselves. And regardless of what's happening, like you might not know the pattern, you might not know what's out there, you will find it. You can still discover it and there's still value there, but you don't have to know it. Right? Like, so there is
and sometimes just creating those environments is enough to alleviate some of that stuff. You'll just, as soon as you create those environments for yourself and for your child, those things just naturally get weeded out because now either you or your child has the body budget for it, or now it's not a problem because you've changed the environment of that thing you were doing, that whatever it was
interrupted, whatever it was, just got handled and dealt with. That's what usually happens. And that's why if you don't have the bandwidth for all that observation and pattern building, there's value there, but you can actually like come in and build this foundation, because what you're doing is you're building a brand new foundation and thinking. And from there, you're going to actually be building your routines around your environment. And you're also going to bring a little sensory kit or environment kit around you, so that even when you are in environments that don't work, you are supporting yourself, right? So, and because what happens, and actually I had a client a couple weeks ago, and they said to me, like, well, I get regulation. So I'm a big, like, just first thing to do is go get regulated. Just stop everything.
Everything else can wait.
Only
I'm right there with
you. If
you.
you're coming from a dysregulated state, you're just asking for like more dysregulation, escalation, miscommunication, regulation first. And he said to me, he was like, well, that's great, but isn't that just like, making me more like have to endure more and more and more and more? And I'm like, because like, he's like, then I can, keep getting regulated and regulated, but I'm not dealing with the root of the problem. But what happens is when you're dysregulated, you don't have the observation and awareness to see or to articulate or to put in your needs or to know your needs. Like when you're dysregulated, you often do not know what your need actually is. So when you put regulation in, so again, you put an environment that thrives, or you put, a regulated coming back to calm space, you have tools, you have support, you do what you do to regulate, which that's a whole conversation in itself, which we will be doing a workshop on. But when you get regulated, it doesn't end there. Once you get regulated, once you have this environment to thrive, what happens, and it just naturally happens, you don't actually have to work hard at it, and you can still bring some intentionality to it and things. But once you are regulated, you are available in your thinking, you're available in your communication, you are available to articulate what your needs are, or to say yeses and nos and what works and what doesn't work, or to have the conversations of inquiry or curiosity. Or when you're regulated, you can look for those patterns. You can look for what those things that are
and you might not even have to look for them. They might just present themselves because now you have the bandwidth to see them.
You just see it. It's right there. You notice. You can say it. It's so apparent. Sometimes it's so apparent because when you're dysregulated, like I can get very emotionally dysregulated. When I go dysregulated, my emotions are just, I don't have capacity. And so like I can't think. Like it's like my ears are swirling with like words and information. Like I don't have access. Whereas as soon as I'm regulated, it's like that doesn't work right there. Like immediately I can see it. I can say it. My child, same thing. When he's regulated, he can say, whoa, right as soon as his body doesn't feel good, or right as soon as something doesn't work. Like you're training ourselves to not step over our regulated state when we do environments to thrive. So as soon as our body, our thinking, our emotions go to any form of dysregulation, we notice, so we can say something right then versus having it to be a mystery.
Yes, for sure.
So that was a long rant, but that's like
it is, but it's a very important rant.
It's so important
because it's the very foundation of stopping all the burnout, the meltdown, the shutdowns. Like if we can start there, because it's always the environment is the place to start, because it's the one thing we can control.
And you don't have to wait to meltdowns to start an environment to thrive. Like I would say this is the first and foremost, whether you're having meltdowns, burnouts, or shutdown. I would just say if you're having meltdowns, burnouts, or shutdowns, this is essential and must get put in. But it's recommended for anybody. I would say the first thing I wish I was given at my child's diagnosis was a workshop on building an environment for thrive.
Or being a workshop on awareness of my own body, of my child's body, of the, like you say, the environments to thrive, but just the awareness of all these things that they don't talk about that influence your child. All they say is they need this and this and this and this and this, but they don't talk about what the environment of that needs to be.
The environment of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what's my own environment? What's my own sensory profile? What is my own thinking ways? What is my own regulation?
Everything is, they co-regulate with you. So if you're not calm and collected and don't have your stuff together, how can we expect them to?
You know, it's
like this unrealistic expectation. We can't expect, I mean, I read somewhere it's like pushing 25 before you can expect a human being to self-regulate. And even in then, what do? When I'm upset, what do? I pick up the phone and I call a friend. I call my mom. I'd be like, hey, Zara. Like, we're just naturally human beings. And I think that's also like an important aspect to remember when you're in meltdown, shutdown, those things that there still needs to be, it doesn't need to be a lot, but there does still need to be some connection to some other person, to some other, it doesn't need to be 10 other people. It doesn't need to be, but there needs to be.
Have to be, like I would say, that doesn't have to be. And the value of connection is extremely regulated. Co-regulation is extremely important. So just say, like when I was in my shutdown state, personally, I actually couldn't, like that was actually not accessible to me. Like, and I'm not saying it isn't to everybody, but for me, at shutdown, at burnout, it was accessible. At shutdown, it was not.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Like,
so sometimes it's just not accessible, and that's okay.
And sometimes in burnout, you're like trying to regulate and do all these things by yourself, but really that co-regulation piece would be so helpful, but you don't know it takes a lot of energy and executive functioning, though, even in that burnt out state, to find the right connection and the right person and the right, where it is fruitful and supportive. And
it's always easier to prepare than deal with it when you're inside of it, right? Like, and this is where if you've never experienced burnout or shutdown or meltdowns, do what's needed so you never have to. Like, it would be better.
Let's not get there. Create your support network, create your environment to thrive, so that you don't ever have to get to that place, and have those safeties in place. Know that you have X friend, this friend, or that friend if you need them.
Sure, this group or this meetup or this whatever. Like, learning yourself, understanding yourself, and having awareness of what your needs are. What are your physical, biological needs? What are your body needs? What are your outputting needs? What are your thinking needs? What are your emotional needs? What are your needs? And tending them, like doing the pre-work of it, the preparation, the tending, cultivating, taking lovely care of yourself in the best of ways, and learning new tools, right? Like, there are so many regulation tools. Like, there's probably like a big giant scroll rolling out of all the regulation tools you can do. There's so many, but learning the ones you work for you, like doing that work when you're not past capacity is great learning.
And it's one of those things that what your natural body wants, it will tell you. So you can eliminate 45% or 50% of those things just by being like, what does my body naturally do when it's stressed, or when it's seeking calm, what does it naturally do? Or what things make me feel calm? And like the other one I want to say is, like, by having those people set out before, while you're calm and regulated, before you get to burnout, is like, during COVID, I reached out to a friend and I said, I am not in a good state. I need to dance. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be the teary. I've got another friend for that. I just need you to be my creative, safe outlet to dance, because that's my coping mechanism, and that's what my body needs, and that's what's going to fill my cup. And when he honored that, right? That was a lot of work, knowing that's what would fill my cup beforehand. But having that and being able to be like, because he was also very aware, very my kind of people in that way, that I could have that conversation. I could be saying, this is what I need. Is this something you can provide? And sometimes he'd be like, you know what, I'm really like dysregulated myself. I'm not in a state where I could do that. And other days he'd be like, yeah, great. Actually, I think I really need to dance too. But it's like cultivating those conversations and those friendships that you can be like, okay, this is blunt. This is where I am. And have no judgment around it. Being like, okay, so how do you want to fix it? What do you need? How can I support you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that pre-work is really great. And it's really, that knowing of yourself is fantastic. And I love what you said too, in the sense of that inquiry. Like, if you are dealing with meltdown, if you are dealing with burnout, it's trickier in shutdown, but when you're at meltdown or burnout, like, asking yourself, like, you'd be surprised at how many answers you can come up with. But asking yourself, what will make me feel calm right now? What will make me feel good in my body right now? What will give me relief right now? What would nourish me right now? Any of those kinds of questions, you'll be surprised. And then just follow through. Like, you'll hear, if you attend our Environments for Thrive workshop, like, some of it's like, I just need some good smells around me, right? Like, I just want to smell something good. I just want to sit and listen to the birds chirp. Listen to birds chirping is such a regulation tool for me. Like, it's so crazy, and it's really available. I just need to lie down and take a rest. I just need to move my body a little bit and put on a song and dance. I just need to even stand up straight. If I just stand up straight, if I just stretch, stretching really gives me relief. I'm just going to moisturize myself. I'm just going to give myself a really big hug. I'm just going to twist my arm. Like, all of these little ideas will come into our head when we ask ourselves that kind of questioning. So if you are dealing, like, if you're a parent and you're dealing with burnout right now, because we have heard from a lot of people that a lot of people are dealing with burnout right now. You can play and search, even if you're lying. Oh, actually, I want to make sure this gets addressed. If you are in shutdown state right now, because this is something that we don't get a lot of information around. If you are in shutdown state right now, so when I was in shutdown, what it looked like is a mess. I was in my bed. I had the lights off. I had covers on me. And I was in this, like, there was some whole negative loops of thinking. There's a whole bunch of stuff
Yeah.
that's happening in that shutdown. I'm feeling wiped out. I'm feeling past capacities. Meet yourself where you are. But what was great was, what is online and available is crazy. There's so much that I could be in my blankets and curl up and just be like, what would give me relief right now? Watching a funny video, finding a regulation tool. What's a new regulation tool I can learn? Listening to some chakra tuning, doing a breathing, lying there in my bed and just breathing, envisioning all my favorite moments in life, reminding myself of the memories, just giving myself a hug. There's so much you can do even while you're lying in your nest that meets yourself and gives yourself like a taking care of yourself. So anything that's going to be nourishing and taking care, no matter how small, the point is if you're in shutdown, even a tiny act, but all it is actually is the tiny acts. When you're in shutdown, you can't have any big acts. It's the tiny acts. It's the tiny things that are going to give you not like relief, coping mechanisms relief, but like taking care of yourself, just nourishing relief.
Yeah.
So like lying there and just putting your hand on your heart, putting your hand on your belly and taking a breath, cuddling up in the covers and saying, I deserve to feel good. Anything along those capacities are very helpful and accessible at that time, right? Because like you don't have the same capacities that you would at burnout when you're in shutdown.
A big heavy blanket for me. The big, like not necessarily a weighted blanket, but like a heavy quilt. It's like, even if it's 100 degrees out, I'll go in the basement and like curl up in that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if there's no one to give me a hug, because that's like my number one.
Yeah, hugs are
my number one.
A hug, like in 16 seconds, you get your oxytocin released, and like you're actually getting your biochemistry working with you in your body and to help regulate.
Yeah, because that's like my number one go-to. I know I will feel better. I just need a hug.
Yeah. And you'll be surprised at how much even hugging yourself gives you that same oxytocin release, as FYI. Because I tend to be a siloer. I silo. I don't necessarily go outward to people.
Yeah.
So it's surprising how much self-regulation is available to you as well.
Good to know.
Yeah, good to know. You can do everything self because I'm a siloer.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. But these are really good conversations to think about before you're there, and if you are there. And please, the biggest thing is meet yourself where you are. Look for what will be nourishing. And it's a good question because nourishing is the like positive way of taking care of yourself versus just the coping way of taking care of yourself, right? Nourishing is having that glass of water. Nourishing is when you're getting up to walk to the bathroom. Like say if you're in shutdown, you're getting up to walk to the bathroom, even try to wiggle your hips a little bit, just to add any extra little wiggle or motion, or stand up straight or do a stretch. It's those little things and the accumulation of those little things that can bring you out so that you can do the bigger things that make the bigger difference.
A lot of people also talk about watching comedy or like something that makes them giggle, because it's again something accessible from your little nest.
Yeah.
I think
that's where the connection and friends come in, right? Like it's so regulating if you can talk with a friend and laugh, right? But if you can't talk with a friend, maybe watching a comedy, just watch, because sometimes there's that like brain dead escape kind of just watching things on repeat, that's not necessarily going to be nourishing for you. But if you're going to take a window and actually like something that's going to like make you smile or make you laugh.
One of my clients likes cat videos, so she'll like, I will allow myself 3 cat TikToks, and it's just enough to perk myself up, and then I can go on with what I'm doing, or I'll move on to something else. But for me, 3 little cat videos makes me giggle, and I can.
Yeah. And as a parent, like, so like looking at if your child is ever dealing with, again, meltdowns, burnouts, or if they're going to the point of shutdown, again, this is the thing, expecting big things. They're not going to be able to deliver on anything big. So it's the tiny things that are nourishing, and not from a demand way, not like you need to have a glass of water, but
you need to walk outside. You have.
But putting the glass of water beside them and being loving and just like, would you like a drink of water right now? It's really refreshing and it'll have your body feel really great. Can I offer you this? Right? Like just in a very loving and invitational way.
I know you really like iced tea, so I put some iced tea drops in your water today. And it's surprising how, and this is something you did a lot with your youngest, was those momentarily every random check-ins. I was really thinking of you, and and they're like, oh, I'm loved. Oh, she was
Yeah.
thinking of me.
Like I'd actually put an alarm on
I'm
my
not
phone,
matter.
and it was like every, I did it every hour at one point. At one point, I did every half hour. So you do what works for you.
Yeah.
And I have an alarm that would just have me, and then I would go open his door and just like, I'm thinking about you. Like, is there anything I can offer you? Is there anything that I can bring? Or I would even bring something. It's like, I have
Yeah.
a nice scent spray here. Could I possibly spray it in your room? Do you want to smell this? And like things that I know would be lifting. And then it's just a
Or
check in.
willing to try. Being like, we're still trying to figure out how to set up his environment to thrive. And these are things I like. He might also like them. So it's a way
Yeah.
of getting to know me, but also being like, hey, I really love the smell. I wondered if you were interested in giving, would you like to
Yeah.
smell it?
And by doing it that way too, it wasn't like a heavy
Yeah.
conversation because he didn't have the capacity to sit down and have those kind of, he didn't have the patience for
Lengthy.
it. Hey,
Yeah.
his verbal, his like, again, he's selective mutism. Like, so the verbal would go out, right? So like
Yeah.
we could have a lot of big conversations. But like if I would just pop in at times where he was already regulated, right? Like he's in his own safe space. He's in his room with his door shut. He likes his zone. But I could then pop in a way that he
Yeah.
knew to expect me that I would, like he knew I would come in every hour, and I would just then ask and invite, and it would just be one small thing
Yeah.
as an invitation or a wondering, right? And it was such a great way to over a month of doing that, the amount of knowledge I learned and awareness he got, like it was these tiny increments, and it built up. Like, wow, the awareness I got about him was crazy. And sometimes it was like, hey, I heard about this stretch thing and I borrowed it from someone. Did you want to give it a try? And we would just use that, and he always could say yes or no. Like it was
Yeah.
never something that was a requirement. It was just, and I always, I did the pre-work, and this is
Yeah.
something I work with parents to do the pre-work, to have it be an invitation. Like what would make it inviting? Like how is a way that you could frame it inside of what they like and how they like to participate. So you've already thought of like their good invitation in. So it's like you're setting him up to be a yes.
Yeah. And but I also want to say that's great when you're regulated and calm and you have the
Yeah.
capacity to do that. But if you're not there yet, that's okay. And that's why I always start with parents being like, we need to get you that
Yes.
foundation first. I'm not even going to worry about your child yet because that will all come
That is such a good
once I
point.
can get you to this place of like, because do you know how often I've come in and I'm way more aware of this now than I was when I first started. When I come in, oh, you should do this and this and this, and you could try this, and like you said, parents were like, I want to, but I don't even have the capacity to think about, like, that's overwhelming for me to even think about doing that. It sounds like it would be a great idea. So I really, in the last couple of years, learned to dial it back and being like, what do you need as parents first? This will all come, I promise.
Well, we model what we're doing. We're modeling for our children what we're doing. That brings our own self-awareness, which gives us the language and the verbiage to even be that bridge for our child. I love what you're saying there. That's so perfect, because it does start with us as the parent. When we can be regulated, we have better capacity. We have capacity, availability. We have thinking. We have functioning. We have awareness. Like it makes everything better. And B, then we get to model it. We get to learn, what did that take for us to learn and to be regulated? What did that take? Like it takes something. And we get a better understanding of what our child might be going through with even their extended differences than they have from us.
And sometimes those differences aren't that far, because a good portion of the families I work with, much like your story, you got this diagnosis from your child and you're looking at it and you're going, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
Or that was me as a child. Or that was
explains like my entire life.
Wow. Broken.
I'm not as broken and as dysfunctional as I thought. Like, talk about like my whole life and context opening up. Like, I really thought I was the problem, the center of failure, and couldn't function. And like, I could never meet these neurotypical standards. Like, I don't know how to do that.
And it's like, and there's this whole process, and it's okay to take a year to figure it out for yourself first, before we try and address, like, yes, let's keep their safety needs met, their mental health the best we can. But like, I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about how I can be like, oh, you could do this or do that, because if you don't have the capacity to have that executive functioning, that thought process yet, we're not going to get anywhere. So like, this whole, like, it always starts, the first at least 3 months of my work with parents is like looking,
That's it.
basically questioning everything you know as a parent and what you need and what you, because it's the whole untangling of everything.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
learning.
yeah, it's like traditional thoughts on things, how you were brought up, how the world tells you should do things, how you're just like, and so many parents look at their kid and they're like, well, I don't understand the problem. I was just like that and I turned out all right. And then I'm like, did you? Like, oh, that sounds horrible, but I'm like, if you really think about it, like how many
How
of us
many
are in
coping
therapy?
mechanisms do you have
How
in
many
place?
of us have, and some of us went through life not even realizing it until like 40 or 35 did I start unpacking
Late
this, being
40s.
like, I was like, wow, this like changes everything. And there is this period of acceptance of like working through that just for you and yourself. Never mind what that looks like for your child and your,
Yeah.
but once you've done it for yourself, it's so much easier to create that for your child and help them create that for themselves.
So brilliant. Because yeah, you get to be the epicenter. Again,
Yeah.
like your child will regulate to you, right? Like you are the epicenter of the environment. You are the parent. They like the way our brains are actually wired. Our children are wired to regulate to our states. Like that's
Yeah.
how their attachment
And
aspects.
we're constantly, like you say, modeling what's
Yeah,
acceptable, what in the world is,
yeah,
how do we interpret it, how do we perceive it, how do we navigate this world. We're telling them, so when we keep pushing ourselves, we're just teaching them that your needs don't count,
yeah.
that everybody else comes first, and that's not what we want to teach our kids.
And the extra bonus that you get is like when you do get yourself to regulated states and understand your regulation and get yourself to that like grounded, safe, calm, regulated space, not only do you get to be available, accessible, a great model, and all those things for your kids, and do you learn and get to be self-aware in that big long list, not only that, you get to actually feel great in your body. You
Yeah.
get to
you get to
actually
feel
like
you get to feel like
enjoy the experience.
you get to be happy, not
Oh,
just existing, but
you get to know what joy
experiencing.
feels like.
Yeah.
What a concept! Oh my
How to
god,
get off the
this is a
hamster wheel.
nice, it's a very nice party
It,
gift that you get on the side.
it is. And you don't even realize you're on the hamster wheel until you get off it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, starting with ourselves as the parent first, learning regulation, meeting ourselves where we are, understanding ourselves, building that awareness, building an environment around us to thrive so that we're not having meltdowns, we're not
Yeah.
going to burn out, we're not going to shut down, we're available, we have capacity, we understand our bodies and what works for us and our needs and our sensory profile and our communication profile and our thinking profile. When we know that for ourselves, holy crap, are we tooled up and available,
Yeah.
accessible for our youth? And we really give them then an amazing solid foundation that, you know what, they get to be exactly who they are, how they are, without any pathology or thinking that they're wrong, bad, or, you know, broken in any way or capacity. They actually get to know themselves as perfect, whole, and complete, and actually an amazing, unique being. And they get to discover what their strengths are and discover their brilliance, and they actually get to learn, function, and advocate for
And they get
themselves.
and they don't ever have to reach the point of burnout. I mean, they might have as a child. Do you know what I mean? But if we
Yeah.
do our job and we get to this state and we can catch it early enough, they may never have to experience that burnout.
Imagine. Because like the
Yeah.
thing is like from burnout, like not only does it take, you know, not only do you have the crappy experience of burnout and the pain and suffering
Yeah.
of burnout, it's the time investment that it takes to not only recover from burnout, because that just brings you to a ground zero, but then
Yeah.
like what was lost during that burnout, right? Like because when we have a really solid ground underneath of us and we are really regulated, wow, we are available. Our brain can operate and think. Our creative systems, like what becomes available, is amazing and incredible.
And what we can like handle in short stresses or short road bumps
Yeah,
is way
our
more when you
capacity
have this
just
steady
grows.
foundation. But when
Yeah,
you don't, those road bumps just become bigger and bigger.
yeah. You get to be more like when you can be
Yeah.
regulated in those spaces, you get to be able to be yeses for more things versus no's and guarded. You get to like actually participate in, you know, your environment in ways that you would want to. You get to be, you include yourself, you get to be part of things and
And
belong.
and when you can plan things, your recovery time, I think when you can plan well, your recovery time can get shorter and shorter than if you hadn't planned as well for it, right?
Absolutely.
And as long as you were planning for that recovery time, then you can keep moving on with your life and it doesn't take you out for 6 months.
Yeah. And like you'll actually find, like, I was amazed, like my son, actually I don't even want to go there because it suggests that there's a pathology. I would just say, like, your capacity can grow in a lot of ways when you come from regulated states, and things that you think you couldn't do or wouldn't do. Like, again, my son who was mute, right? Like he wouldn't talk at certain times and things. And it was something we just thought would be more of a lifetime aspect. But then once he learned regulation in these aspects of things, and he actually articulates his needs, and he feels safe in his environment and he knows his environment. Sure, there's certain environments he'll just say, like, actually a bunch of his brother's friends were over the other day, and he went to go outside to hang out, and he actually just asked, like, how many people are out there? And I was like, actually, there's about 5. And he just turned around and said, I'm not going to go do that. Like, he just knew himself. Like he doesn't like to be in environments that have a lot of people that he doesn't know.
And it would be different if it was his brothers or his safe people, 5 of his own people that he's regulated and feels loved and accepted and can be himself with. Would be very different. And it's all right to make that choice.
And like he was just like, I'll just go out later. Like he knew in that moment he could go do it. And he was just like, I'm not going to put myself through that, and like it's not going to give him the value over the cost. And so he made a choice. But like the fact that he knows that about himself, it's not a bad thing, a wrong thing. It's a total acceptable thing. He gets to create that life, but he's speaking the whole time. Like he's not putting himself into a situation where he goes into a selective mute response, because he doesn't like that for himself. So he gets to actually have a say, like that's going to put me to this capacity, and he knows he can do it, but he doesn't like the experience of it, so he's going to decline. And like, so he doesn't actually know himself really as selective mute. Like he actually just knows himself in environments that thrive, that work for me, are what I'm about.
Because I mean, even when I started working with him, he hardly talked. Now I can't shut him up. I love him to pieces, but he's like, I mean, sometimes I'm like, well, what happened this weekend? I've seen some really awesome pictures, but he's so into the video game that we don't always get there. That was fun. In the moment, if I'd asked him, and maybe if we were, it wasn't the most opportune opportunity to be asking those questions, but he just.
Another example with him too is like for a while he struggled with reading. Like he had decided he wanted to read, but he was struggling. He was really grappling, and we just fell upon this. It wasn't something that I overly researched, but we found that when he was out on the boat, like we have a boat that we were on, and when he's on the boat, he's really regulated, partly about, I think, being outside, being close to the ocean, different routines and rhythms.
I think the waves, I swear, the waves are so regulating. I don't know, for me.
Yeah, it is.
You make a lot of other people sick, but for me, it's regulating.
And so we brought him, like, he spent, I think 4 months at one point on the boats consistently. And like, you just watched him decompress. You watched his regulation just happen. His nervous system just relaxed. And without effort, he just started reading. Like, without effort. It was just everything was going so much. His thinking couldn't happen. He was so dysregulated. Reading was such hard work. As soon as he was regulated, it wasn't.
It was now accessible. It was a challenge that he could handle.
So there's such, and this is why both Kat and I are really big fans of like the environment to thrive and like regulation and bringing yourself to that calm, grounded state, because you are setting yourself up to win. You're setting yourself up for success. You're setting yourself up to know yourself powerfully and to know your capabilities versus thinking that all these limitations are yours. They're just the neurotypical environment with expectations. They're not yours. That has nothing to do with you.
Well, and then it's the same thing when a kid gets a diagnosis and this sheet of paper of like where their IQ is and all this. And I'm like, but they're not regulated right now. I bet those numbers would be very different if we had an environment where they could thrive and we could do these tests in a way that didn't feel like a test. Like they're being evaluated, like they're bad or wrong. Like if we could just like build that, like that's not a true representation of what is possible for your child. when we give them the confidence and like that supportive environment where they can thrive and they have confidence that they can do hard things, that they can do with the right supports or with the right, like, they learn a growth mindset.
Like they get such a great feedback loop. Like neurodivergent people, and this is where it's so unfortunate, right? And what tends to happen with somebody who's neurodivergent, they're thrown into a neurotypical world, and then their entire feedback loop that they're always getting is you're not enough, you're this, you're too much, you're blah, blah, blah. It's always this negative feedback loop. So how they start to relate to, I forget there's statistics on it of how many more times in a day they get a negative feedback loop. And it's like giant. So when you're a child and you're forming your identity during these years, your identity starts to get related to this negative feedback loop in your environment. Whereas if you build yourself an environment to thrive, an environment for thrive, an environment that meets you where you are, your needs are met, your needs are in, you have a different capacity, you have a different availability. And so you're actually showing up and you're getting now a different kind of feedback loop. You're getting that, like, as you said, I can do this, I can be yes, I can have access. I know what my limits are. I know that my limits actually can move. I know that I have power and control here. I know I have a say here. And like you actually get this positive feedback loop, which that then gets to form their identity. So you get like two options. It's like this negative feedback loop identity or this positive feedback loop identity.
I can do this. I just need this, this, and this. Or I can do this. It just might take me a little longer. Or I can. Someone believes in me. I can. I've done this, this, this.
Yeah.
So now I must, I'm sure I can do this. It just might take me a while. Like you just start, and I really see that in your youngest son. There was a time when he'd be like, meltdown, shut down, session over because he couldn't fly the plane through the tunnel. Now he's like, I wonder if I approach it a little bit higher in this way, or I know the wind is saying this way, so I'm going to approach it that way. And we tried to fly through that tunnel like a billion times one day, but he wasn't like in fight or flight about it at all. He was like,
I know his frustration.
I wonder what other aspect I could change or.
Like he used to, like his frustration tolerance used to be like immediate high levels of frustration, which would then stop him. Like there would be limitations that would come with his high level of frustration, but that high level of frustration was his body's way of saying alert, alert, not functioning, not regulated, nervous system response, can't like cha-cha.
And that was a very important piece of us building our relationship, because in those moments I honored that. I said, it's okay. Are you done? It's okay to be done. I can see you're really dysregulated right now. It's okay. We can be done. Or he'll be like, he was really excited one day because certain friends were online. He wanted to play a game and he's like, I'd really like to play with them. And I know you can't, like, you're not really good at this game and it would be really frustrating for me. But he could like articulate that to me. And I said, you know what, buddy? I know this opportunity doesn't come very often. You totally can go play with your friends. I'll see you next week. And that's why even on his birthday, when you give him the option, he was like, yeah, I still want to hang out with Kat. Because he feels valued. He's like, my feelings, my emotions matter. Kat values me as a person. And so he like, and it's in those moments, like lots of people I've seen so many, because of the work I do with parents, they're like, I was like over listening, and this person was like 5 more minutes, just do this thing, blah, 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 like trying to get their time in. And for me, that's never been the issue. I'm like, what, are you done? Okay, I'll honor that. See you next week. Thanks for letting me know. And that's what builds the relationship. And now that they'll stay for hours with me, they look forward to seeing me because I'm like, hey, you know your body best. I'm not going to pretend to know what your body needs. There's some days where kids are like, you know what, I haven't eaten yet and I'm really hungry. Okay, do you want to go take 10 minutes and grab something to eat? Do you want to call it a day? I'm okay with that. Like,
and it builds, like, again, like it builds trust, rapport, safe spaces, which are all fantastic, but it also puts the autonomy over where they are. Like they are autonomous beings versus making them have to do something. It's like we need to surrender our knowing of them, and it's like they get to have a say at the end of the day. Yes, we get to keep them safe. We get to put certain things in, but bottom line, the more we give them the opportunity to be related to as an autonomous being that knows themselves best, then that's when they get to actually learn and navigate that and learn the edges of that, because they get that's over there, and their responsibility, which is like the best gift you can give your child, is like them learning how to navigate being an autonomous free agent for themselves. Doesn't mean they might need they still might need accommodations and supports and everything else, but they also get to say what they are, they get to say who they are, they get to say how they are, and they get to say all of it because it's them and their body.
And they get to own it, and they get to be confident about it. They get to be okay with being different.
Yeah.
And that's not bad or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm a human, and this is what I need to in this situation. And either you can give it to me or I can choose not to go.
Yeah.
And I have that choice. Like you say, that autonomy to be like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it does require something as a parent, right? Like, because there is a flexibility that requires, an open-mindedness that requires, an awareness for yourself, and a regulation for yourself, right? Like those are.
And it takes time to grow that. That muscle is
doesn't happen overnight. It's a very new way to parent and to think and to experience and to go through and relate with your child. So it is a developing and growing yourself. It's not going to be perfect, but it's starting. It's just starting. It's getting curious. It's saying that there is nothing wrong. There's no pathology here. Regulation matters. And we each have differences. Everybody is different and everybody experiences every environment very differently. So just having that open-mindedness to get that just because you're experiencing something one way doesn't mean somebody else is not experiencing an entirely different way.
We can experience the same thing in very different ways. And it's just such a beautiful way of seeing the world, of being like, you know what? All of this could be true in this moment for different people.
How inclusive is that, right? Like, it's just so inclusive. Like, everybody gets to be at the table. Everybody gets to say what works for them and what doesn't work for them and what their needs are, and can include themselves or exit at any time at their own free will.
And like the collaboration that comes from being like, this is the way I feel and see and be, and this is how I feel, see, be, am in this space.
Yeah.
And how can create a space where everyone can exist, which might, or you're right, have the choose not to, because there are some very different needs where creating an environment that's all inclusive may not be doable, but you can make times that's available to certain people, or like there's ways of making it being inclusive.
It's inclusive at least enough to say that accommodations are cared about here. Accommodations are looked.
We want to hear.
We are looking to collaborate here. And some things are just like, if you're going to an outdoor concert, it's an outdoor concert, and might be a limitation to the level of accommodations that can get made.
To pay for it, we need X amount of people.
Yeah, right? Like,
I'd like an outdoor concert with 10 people, please.
Yeah. And so
Brian Adams, please.
And watch it from home. But you get to say whether you're going into it or not, and the accommodations get to get looked at and considered, right? So, and you get to at least know yourself, and if you are a yes or a no, if you have capacity, if you don't, if you want to build in the recovery that would take. Those are all the kinds of questions you start to ask yourself and put in place so that you are meeting you and your needs met and not stepping over your needs. Your needs are 100% important. The important factor. Your needs are important. Your child's needs are important. People's needs are important.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to end it.
I think so.
If we get our needs met, then we don't lead to burnout, to meltdowns, to, I guess it really goes meltdowns, burnout, shutdown.
Yeah.
And if we can get in front of that,
and
we're all here. Throw ideas out. We have our parent chats on Thursday nights and Friday afternoons. They're like, we try to be as available as possible for you guys, because we've walked this road and we know that it's not going to look the same for you, but we've at least got some ideas that you can try on.
You have your own needs over there, and we want to actually know what your needs are. So if you have a need, if you have a question, if you have an inquiry, if you have something you want us to address or talk about, email us. We are the divergentzone@gmail.com. You can email us. You can put your question in. We want to find ways to support you having your needs met, and you having your child's needs met, and your child getting to be empowered and advocating to have their needs met. Like, this is all very important for us. So if you have questions, ask. We have the parenting meetings. You can come out too. We have monthly workshops, and we love this conversation.
And sometimes it's just nice to say it out loud and be heard.
Yeah. You're not
Sometimes
alone.
it's
You're not
validating enough.
crazy.
Like, this is real and its existence. And thank you for validating that it's okay to feel this way.
Yeah. And it takes something.
It
Like,
does.
you know, this currently isn't the traditional way and a traditional trajectory.
Yeah.
So it takes something to, and it's not an overnight fix or process. It is a learning and a growing. It takes time. And truthfully, your needs are going to change over time. So it's not even like you learn it once. Your
Yeah.
child's not going to just learn it once. It's an ongoing way to interact with yourself. So you're ongoingly learning and being aware of your needs so you can articulate it. And it doesn't go away. But as soon as you learn how to be looking for your needs and how to advocate and articulate for your needs, then you can ongoingly keep learning and keep doing it because it will be over your whole lifetime, depending on your circumstances, what's happening.
And it gets easier and easier and easier to do because you've done it before and you're like, oh, like this evaluation, this like you already know some things that are going to show up for you, and you can just you just get really good at planning for it.
Yeah.
Or seeing them. And as more and like you say, your needs change. There might be a time when you could do this one thing, and now this is like sensory overwhelming for this, that, or any other reason.
Yeah.
Sensory needs change.
Yeah. So the biggest thing is to like making that matter, making your needs and you feeling good in your body and calm and grounded in your body matter. It actually being the number one important thing that navigates you in your life, because truthfully, that is what is going to have you regulated. And then from regulation, you can be happy, you can enjoy, you can be available, you can be accessible.
For sure.
Yeah. So thank you for joining. Thank you for being with us. And thank you, Kat. I always love these conversations with you.
So do I. They always get away on us. It's like a 2-hour conversation.